Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down what you, as clinicians and mothers, really need to know about GLP-1 agonists. You know, drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy, and what it all means for breastfeeding.
Okay, let's just dive right in. First, we'll talk about the clinical scenario that you're probably seeing more and more. Then, we'll get into the science of the drug itself. From there, we'll look at the latest data on that big question. Does it get into breast milk? Then, we'll pivot to what the real clinical concern is, and we'll wrap up with some practical guidance you can use with your patients. So, let's start by setting the stage with a question that's quickly going from a what-if scenario to a what do we do now reality in postpartum care.
This isn't some far-off hypothetical anymore, right? With millions of people using these medications, this is a real-world question that lactating mothers and their healthcare providers are facing every day, and it absolutely demands a solid, evidence-based answer. And if you need proof of how urgent this is, just look at this number, a 500% spike in calls to the experts. I mean, that really tells the story. Parents are asking these questions, and they need good, reliable information from us.
So, to even begin to answer that patient's question, we have to get a handle on the medication itself. What exactly is it, and what is it doing in the body?
Okay, so at their core, these drugs are basically synthetic copycats of a hormone our gut naturally makes after we eat. It's called GLP-1, and it's a key player in telling our brain, hey, we've eaten, we're good, we're satisfied. The way they work is actually a pretty cool chain reaction. The drug mimics that GLP-1 hormone, which in turn slows down how fast food leaves the stomach. That sends a signal up to the brain's satiety centers, the parts that make you feel full. And the end result? You feel less hungry, and you end up eating fewer calories.
All right, now for the big one. The question that pretty much every parent is going to ask first. Is this going to get into my milk and affect my baby?
Well, thankfully, we have some real data here. A brand new study this year from the Infant Risk Center decided to tackle this question head on. They took milk samples from moms who were actually using semaglutide and analyzed them. And the result? Well, it's about as clear as it gets. In all the milk samples they tested, from 8 different women, taken at different times after their injections, the drug was simply not detected, even with highly sensitive lab equipment.
And the researchers themselves were really direct about this in their conclusion. This statement provides some pretty significant reassurance on that whole issue of drug transfer. It's a really powerful piece of evidence for both clinicians and parents.
Now, to put all of this into clinical context, there's a standard measurement that gets used called the relative infant dose, or RID. You can just think of it as a risk assessment tool. And the widely accepted safety line for medications during lactation is an RID of less than 10%.
So get this, even though the drug wasn't detected, the researchers did a worst-case scenario calculation. They pretended the milk had the tiniest amount their machines could have possibly found. And even then, the max possible infant dose was just 1.26%. I mean, that is way, way below the 10% safety threshold. It's not even close.
Okay, so if the drug isn't really getting into the milk in any significant way, are we in the clear? Well, not so fast. This is where we have to make a really important pivot in our thinking. This question really gets to the heart of it. We've been so focused on the drug molecule itself, but the real evidence-based concern is actually somewhere else entirely.
This slide just lays it out perfectly. The clinical conversation has to shift from the common fear, drug in the milk, to the evidence-based concern, what is the drug's effect on the mother doing to her nutrition? It's not about what's in the milk, it's about the mother's ability to make the milk.
So let's put some numbers to that. The primary effect of the drug, reducing appetite, is incredibly powerful. We're talking about a potential drop in a mother's daily calorie intake by as much as 39%. That's huge. And here's the real kicker. This massive calorie drop is happening at the exact same time her body needs significantly more energy. You need about 500 extra calories a day for exclusive breastfeeding. So you have a 39% reduction in supply colliding with a 500-calorie increase in demand. You can see the problem, right?
All right, so given everything we've just laid out, what does this actually mean for counseling? How do we take this information and turn it into practical, helpful advice for our patients? The game plan here needs to be all about proactive nutrition. The goal is to fight back against that suppressed appetite. This means planning for small, frequent meals that are packed with nutrients, making protein the first thing you eat to feel full and help with healing, staying really well hydrated, and of course, keeping a close eye on any changes in milk supply.
And this table is a great little cheat sheet for that. When your appetite is low, every single bite has to count. So the goal is to get the most bang for your buck, nutritionally speaking. We're talking lean proteins, fruits, veggies, whole grains, and trying to minimize those empty calories from things like sugar and processed foods.
Now, here's another really critical piece of counseling that actually goes beyond lactation. Because these drugs slow down digestion, they can mess with how other oral medications are absorbed. And a big one to be aware of is oral birth control. This is a vital piece of safety information for any postpartum patient.
And for mothers who are dealing with obesity, the conversation gets even more layered. We know that obesity itself can be a risk factor for low milk supply, sometimes because of things like insulin resistance. Now, a GLP-1 might help with that in the long run, but the immediate risk from appetite suppression happens first. So this requires a really careful, individualized discussion about the risks and benefits with the whole healthcare team.
So, we'll leave you with this question to think about. As these powerful medications become a more common part of people's lives, how do we need to evolve postpartum care? It really challenges us to double down on nutritional support, making the role of lactation consultants and dietitians more vital than ever in helping moms reach their health goals without having to sacrifice their breastfeeding journey.